Hi, my name's Ian Hamilton. I'm going to talk to you about some of the flora and fauna, some of the plants and the animals that are here in Brunswick Heads, New South Wales. All these animals you'll see are somewhere, they're hidden on the seat in the beautiful artistry of this seat. See if you can find them while I talk to you about them. I work for a company called Kookaburra Culture Wilderness School. When I take kids out in the land, I spend a lot of time on the nature strip up through Tyagra and through Bruns, around Torquay. Then we see a lot of, obviously, the fauna and the flora on the land. You'll see the black cockatoos. The black cockatoos on the seat here, they're such a big bird. They're huge with such a big wingspan. And one day we saw these black cockatoos. Some of the children pointed them out because there was things dropping from the trees, and we looked up and there was a coastal banksia and they were eating out of the coastal banksia, and I said, well, how many black cockatoos are up there? And we counted, we got to 12 black cockatoos. They're all munching up in the coastal banksia. And most people don't know, but this coastal strip is really interesting. It obviously goes from a flat beach, sandy, totally saline environment to the grasses, and it comes up and you've got a lot of the banksia and some wattle and some geebung. And then as you go further inland, it actually becomes very much more densely populated with trees, and it becomes more of a literal rainforest. And that's where we often see the swamp wallabies. They'll often poke up. They're a very small, squat little wallaby. They're only sort of so high, maybe this high, and black face, like a black face, and they mix into the trees. A lot of the melaleuca, the paperbark trees there. The pelicans are ever present on the water and on the land, but of course on the river. We'll always see them paddling along the river and fishing. They're the ultimate fishermen. They're such good fishermen because they've got this such big beak, and they can dive down, and they get so quickly, they can catch the fish so quickly. And then the dolphin. Many people will see the dolphins come into Torquay Beach. They'll often come in there and play around, even with the swimmers, but sometimes in their ones, sometimes singly, but often there's a few of them. There's a pod of dolphins that will come in, and it's amazing to see them. They're such beautiful, elegant animals in the water. And then you'll also see on the seat the green turtle, and I haven't been fortunate enough to see the green turtle at Torquay at the beach there, but I know I had a story of a boy who went snorkeling, and not only did he see the green turtle, he actually was snorkeling with it and could swim up with it and actually managed to touch it on its shell, on its back there. So the green turtles are around, and hopefully one day soon, when we're swimming or we're snorkeling, we'll get to see them, or maybe you will. And then there's the green tree frog, which we haven't seen a lot on the land. The green tree frogs are hard to find. The frogs are really hard to find. We have heard them. We've definitely heard them. We've had a lot of dry sort of days on the land. You really need that moisture to come in. And the green tree frog he's a consummate eater of insects. We actually have one at the house here that actually eats the little bugs that have come in, and they go to the fly screen, and he just sits there all night eating these bugs. So they're a great little creature, clearing up some of the insects that sometimes can be annoyance to us. Rainbow lorikeets are such a loud, dominant feature in the landscape around Brunswick Heads and also Mullumbimby, all the way into the night time. I was really quite fascinated at different times when I got to this land. I said to some locals, are these lorikeets always this loud as the sun is setting? It's so loud, it's intense, you know. If anyone's busking around Brunswick Heads or Mullumbimby, you can't even hear them because sometimes the lorikeets are so loud. So they come in their flocks of hundreds, and they'll sit up in the palm trees. They're definitely a big feature, and we see them often flying low through the scrubland, and you will hear them, and you'll hear the loud screech, and you'll see their beautiful colours. The brush turkey is a very interesting animal. He's ever present on the landscape, and they are super tame. If you've been to Brunswick Heads and you've been around and you've happened to leave a chip packet out, it won't be there for long before the brush turkeys will come in and check out any food that you might have. They're not just on the landscape as a bird, they're on the landscape as their nest, because their nests are sometimes, you know, they can be a foot, even 2 feet high. They can be really quite high, big mounds you'll see that they've built up with sand and debris on the coastal dune area mainly, and around the scrubland and around Torquay at the back there. You'll see these scrub turkeys, these wild turkeys that go out there, and they build big nests, and they're always picking up the ground. They're always looking for insects, and they'll chase other birds off. And they're not really worried about humans anymore. They've sort of melded into the landscape, knowing that people are walking down the beach and people are walking along the fire trail, and you'll hear something and there he is, looking and searching and hunting like all the animals do out there. And then there's all this flora that you will see on the seat. The flora on the seat, of course, sets the scene. It allows these birds to eat. I talked about the black cockatoo before, eating off the coastal banksia. The spinifex, the coastal spinifex, this is big tall grass that is very, very hardy. It will grow in very low moisture conditions, in sandy soil, in salty soil. Most things won't grow. The wild hibiscus, or the beach hibiscus that you see, which is the big yellow flower, you'll see the yellow flower that comes out, which is actually a bush tucker, so that can be eaten, the petal can be eaten. One of the trees we call the 100-headed tree, because it's got, we counted, it was like 34 heads coming out of the ground of this hibiscus tree, you know, but it looks like 100 when they're all coming up and they're moving all over the place. So great trees for the kids to climb. Yeah, quite an amazing bush tucker and a beautiful flower on the land, the hibiscus on the land. The mangrove, the grey mangrove that is ever present on the river, and there's these four tides, a low tide and then a high tide and then a low tide and then a high tide. In one day, we get to see, the mangrove is often covered in the high tide, you can't really see it, but often we're on the river in the low tide, and this mangrove are growing up, and they're little things in the water, little pokey mangroves coming up, and then the big trees. And obviously they're very salt tolerant, because if you've ever tasted the water from the river, it's very salty still. Not as salty as the ocean, it's the Pacific Ocean at Brunswick, but still quite salty, so they're quite an amazing tree that they can tolerate such a high amount of salt. There's a great little plant that you'll see on the dunes, for reasons exactly I don't know, they call it pigface. Little small succulent sort of green plant, looks a bit like cactus-like, small, low to the ground, and it'll often have a pink inner part there. So this pigface plant, and it's also another wild edible on the land that you can pick from parts of that plant and eat it, and it's quite juicy, and it's quite good to rehydrate you, to get some water back in you, because it holds quite a lot of water. So you see on this seat there's such a wide variety of different plants and different animals, the flora and fauna of this area, and it's a depiction, I guess, maybe for you to go out and see if you can find some of these animals. And the only way you will probably find not so much the birds but the animals is if you're really, really quiet. You may have to be standing very still, and you'll definitely have to be listening, because they are listening for you, and then they hear you first, they will disappear into the flora. But just remember, all these different animals and plants have always been on the land since time immemorial. So have fun trying to find them while you're out here at Brunswick Heads.